a boy, Christmas brought so much joy. Couldn't wait for the presents and laughter. I couldn't sleep late at night, looking for Santa with lights. Those are the memories I still remember. Then I became a man, lost sight of who I am, but right in front of me was the answer. 'Cause on Christmas I feel joy, and I turn back to a boy. The answer is to stay young forever. This is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song, this is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song, this is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song, this is not a Christmas, this is not a Christmas song.
Hello, Star Wars fans. You know, there's just 31 days until Christmas 2023. And I've got some Santa Claus visits to do today. We're starting to get things ready here and looking more like Santa Claus, because today we're going to be visiting with some folks and spreading some holiday cheer following Thanksgiving. I hope all of you had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday here in the States. And for those of you in Canada and UK and elsewhere, I hope that you have a wonderful Friday. We're going into a weekend. Today, of course, is a big shopping day. My wife's upstairs right now doing the online shopping. But we've got a ton of Star Wars news to talk about this week. But before we jump into it, I just want to ask you guys once again, you know, the great way to support the channel is liking this stream, commenting in the chat. YouTube loves interaction. Like the more interaction, the more better. Like, we like to say that around here, more better. The more interaction, the more better. You guys in the chat are tremendously helpful. Let other folks know that we're here. And then, of course, in this gap between Star Wars content, we've been posting new Star Wars content over on our Patreon. It's a great way to support the channel for as little as $1 a month. And you get access to all kinds of other things. You help the channel. You get more Star Wars. It's a win-win. And you guys, today we're going to be covering a lot of stories from Bespin Bulletin. And our friend Bespin has kindly agreed to join the show today. We've got a ton of stories, so I'll bring Bespin in. How you doing today?
I'm not bad, Santa. How are you? How's everybody in the chat?
Thank you. We're good. We're good. You have been a busy boy this week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this has been news. It's almost as if the strikes are over.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's been quite a wealth of news. And there's a lot of things to talk about. And as the internet does, the internet is going to internet. I mean,
right.
You want it. That's how things work. So people will take part of a story and then mischaracterize the rest of it, all based on something that they can spin out. And hopefully today we can address some of those things and just kind of get through these stories. Also, our friend Jason from Making Star Wars, he's probably still sleeping. And I saw Meg just posted a video like 5 minutes ago. So I think she's running behind. So we may or may not get other folks to join us, but we're going to be covering Bespin's stories. And let me bring them up here. And we'll start with the one that got a ton of attention earlier this week. And Dave Filoni's been promoted to the Chief Creative Officer, the CCO, which is fantastic news, I think, for Star Wars fans, for Lucasfilm. And it doesn't matter if you are a prequels fan, sequels fan, or anything in between. I think a CCO has been a kind of a missing position at Lucasfilm since George Lucas left. If you go back to Lucasfilm pre-sale, he was the chief creative officer. Like, Star Wars was in his brain. And then there was all the other stuff, right? All the EU stuff, anything he wasn't Like he said, my 6 movies, those are my Star Wars. Everything else I see
Right.
adjacent, right?
Mhm.
So when he sold it to Kathleen, or sold it to Disney, and appointed Kathleen Kennedy as the CEO,
Mhm.
she was never and is not the chief creative officer. I would argue. How do you take that?
I don't think. I think Kathy at the time had her fingers in too many pies. I think the current new structure that they've built with Dave in this role, the role of Carrie Beck, allows Kathy to do what she does best, which is to be a super producer, which is what she's been for decades. And we're now we seemingly now have a good structure at Lucasfilm in terms of management. Kathy's at the top as she will be for another couple of years, and then beneath her you have Dave, who's having a lot more control in the narrative of stories across the board, not just in live action but across all mediums. It seems when it comes to the shows and the films, and then you have Carrie Beck, who's the one going out there and finding the talent and originating these stories and collaborating with filmmakers and bringing them into the fold at Lucasfilm. So I think where the structure that they're currently now building is probably overdue, and I think promoting Dave to chief creative officer is a smart move. I think people have misconstrued what that means. Dave does explain it himself well. Um, so yeah, it's not what they think it is. I think they think he's Kevin Feige. Some people.
Right.
He is
Yes.
not. Feige does hold the CCO position over at Marvel Studios in addition to being the president, and that's the key factor. Is that Feige basically does the 3 jobs of Beck, Filoni, and Kennedy. Dave Filoni's
Yeah.
doing one.
Yeah. I saw John Campia cover the
Mm-hmm.
story as well, and John said as much as what you just said. Like he is not the Kevin Feige of
Mm-hmm.
Lucasfilm, and he has a little bit different role. He's got the same title but not the same role.
Right.
And Filoni does specifically say in here what his role is
Mm-hmm.
and what it's not.
Right.
He's so to get into your story. It says in his role, he won't be telling. This is right here. He won't be telling filmmakers what to do, but instead will be trying to help them tell the best story that they want to tell. That's a key. That's a key point there. I guess if I think about the Mandalorian,
Mm-hmm.
season 1 especially, but season 2, the first 2 seasons, when you watch the Disney gallery on those seasons, you saw that Jon Favreau had one story to tell, and then he had these different directors coming in directing different pieces. The entire story was John's, and Dave was assisting with that.
Mm-hmm.
Dave wasn't telling John what to write, but he did give him some rails on the edge, and you could see that from time to time when John wanted to do something, Dave would laugh and then just say no,
Mm-hmm.
right? But he wasn't telling John what to write.
No.
And if you guys haven't seen Disney Gallery Mandalorian season 1, that's the one I would especially encourage you to go watch, but season 2 as well. You get this dynamic that I think is very characteristic. Keep this story in mind and watch those episodes, and you kind of get this idea that's how Dave's acting in this role of CCO. Sabersmith says, "Do you think they are grooming Dave to take Kathy's position, or no?" I know my opinion. I'll ask yours first.
I don't think so. I don't think Dave is being groomed for that. I used to think Michelle Ridgwan would have become that, but obviously she's departed the company. No, I think Dave Kathy's been talking about Dave and haven't wanted to rise up the ranks and to get his hands on live action direction for like a long time. There's something they spoke about a lot at Star Wars Celebration. I think I don't I don't know who would be the next president following Kennedy, but we've yet to see the fruits of the labor over at DC Studios with James Gunn and Peter Safran. But I
Mhm.
think the idea of that setup that they have at DC Studios is an interesting one. Um, Gunn primarily takes care of the creative side of being a president, whereas Peter Safran takes on more of the producer side over there.
Mm.
So I think if the partnership that we have at the moment of Beck being the one greenlighting projects and introducing filmmakers into the Lucasfilm fold and developing their stories, and Dave helping them narratively, I could see a partnership of a co-presidency working well. Because
Yeah.
again, Beck and Filoni also have a long-standing relationship, so
Yeah.
they are familiar with one another.
Yeah, and if you're as you're describing this, as these roles are become more distinct,
Hmm.
and Kathleen's taking on the producer role that she is a Hall of Fame producer for, right?
100%. Yeah.
Um, eh, then Dave is the CCO.
Hmm.
You could see in what you just said, what Arya just said, that Beck might step into Kennedy's role,
Hmm.
um, and Dave continues on as the CCO. Um,
Hmm.
that makes sense to me. It definitely makes sense to me. Um, uh, so I agree with you. I think that back to the question was, I don't think Dave is going to be taking Kathleen's job. I don't think he's being groomed to take her
No.
job. I think Kathleen Kennedy has been working him into this role of CCO for some time. And that's why I mentioned that the gallery from
Hmm.
Mandalorian season one. What Mandalorian season one is, what how far removed are we from that now? 4 years?
Yeah. 2019.
Yeah. Yeah. We're 4 years removed from that. And you see that now he's stepped into the CCO role. And I would imagine over the next year that'll begin to become more and more clear in how it plays out, because
Yeah.
he's maturing into it. Also, CCO. Let's go back to the Feige comment. Like, and I mentioned how John had kind of written the story for Mandalorian season 1 and 2. My impression, and I think you're better connected here than I am for sure, is that uh, Kevin is almost in that John kind of role in defining each of these waves of the Marvel universe, right? Phase 1, phase 2, all of that. I don't see Dave stepping in to do that either.
No. No.
Yeah.
It seems at least the position of Lucasfilm the last few years, um, I would say post Benioff and Weiss, is that they are attempting to make individual stories, which could go on to be a series of films. So they developed Rogue Squadron, they had Taika's movie, they had Feige's movie at the time, and they're all individual stories. They weren't connected. So they're looking to bring in filmmakers and people with ideas to make their own film. And we're seeing that again now with with the Charmin Bay Chinoy film, Sean
Mhm.
Levy, Filoni obviously being a Mandoverse film, um, and Taika still on the billing as well, and they're all separate from one another. The one thing at Celebration that they kept saying on stage when they announced Dave's movie was everything we're seeing, he's involved in. Like everything
Mhm.
we've been seeing the last few years, and everything we're going to see for the few years going forward, he's involved in. He's Dave mentions in the article that he's just coming in earlier in the process rather than later. The point he was coming in, the story's already being developed, and he will just maybe give it a final pass, give them some advice. But at this point, with his new role, he's coming on early in development. So Carrie Beck will greenlight them because she likes the idea of the filmmaker and their pedigree or whatnot. And as Dave said, he will then help them from an early stage of development tell the best version of the story they want to tell. But it's all on the individual filmmakers, whether that be the writers or the directors. Dave is just there to help them and guide them to tell the best story possible. He's not there to do this phase 1, phase 2, and this massive interconnected universe. It will be interconnected, but not to the the extent of what Feige is doing with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Perfect. You've covered that absolutely perfectly, because that's a lot of people, all they can think of is Kevin Feige, and that
Right.
now Dave Filoni is the Kevin Feige, and that's not true in any sense.
I remember this news broke the other day, and me and Jason were playing Fortnite, and I went over the article to him, and I was like, I've got to write about this, and I was like, we should do a show. I'm going to rush the article so we can do a show. And he's like, do you think we need to do a show? Do people need to understand? I was like, they're going to say he's Kevin Feige. And lo and behold, they thought he was Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does state what his job is, what his role is. And I think it's a great fit. I think it's a great fit for the structure of Lucasfilm. And I also think it's great going forward for us as fans with the content that's going to be produced. Having Dave involved early on is just a benefit. He was involved anyway. Yes. So
yeah, and what you wrote in the story here, Filoni explains that he's going to be much earlier in the development process. Mm-hmm. He says, in the past he was brought in to projects to give his input after they'd already been developed. Now he'll be coming in before they start or as they're starting. So that's a big difference, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't stress this enough. Like this right here, you can read it. Like it's so clear, right? It's him. He says, and we read this before. You're right, trying to help them tell the best story they want to tell. But then you clarified under it in your you're right here. It says he added his responsibilities to understand the intent of the filmmaker and for him to be a resource to them. So that's it. Oh, Nerd Mafia. Yeah, so much for the rumors of Feige leaving Marvel to run Lucasfilm. Yeah, that was nonsense to begin with, right?
The best one, the best Kathleen Kennedy's fired rumor ever was before the release of Indiana Jones. It was like, she's already been fired, but she'll either be let go either before Indiana Jones or after Indiana Jones. And it might take a while after Indiana Jones. Contract ends in 2024. So, I don't know. That one was... I do think she'll get an extension, though.
Well, the extension of that... Yeah. The extension to what you're saying is that this is just further proof that she's been, technically fired while not totally fired. Right? Like she's losing her control. She's losing her power. Mm-hmm. It's all being disseminated out to everybody else. She is no longer the big dog. It's actually,
that'll be a narrative that somebody will try and paint. But in reality, it's likely Kennedy that put these people in these positions. And again, she has her next big release is the Rey movie, and that's in 2026. She's going to be there to oversee that. So people should expect an extension to her contract probably until 2027, I'd imagine. Once that comes to a pass next year. And again, we have not really seen the fruits of this structureship yet with Filoni and Beck and Kennedy, and that'll take a few years to see. So yes, they're probably going to be there now for the foreseeable future, at least.
I want to remind folks, like, I worked in corporate America for 18 years for one of the largest financial institutions in the world, right? It's number one in the US and one of the top 5 in the entire world. JP Morgan Chase, right? I worked there for 18 years. And at management levels, and especially senior management levels, corporate, they have these, there's 2 things. Everybody has to have a 5-year plan. Everybody.
Mhm.
Every year they ask you on your performance review and your what's your 5-year plan?
Right.
But better than that, when you get into senior management and executive management,
Mhm.
they then have succession plans. They have to have who succeeds you. If you get hit by a bus tomorrow,
Mhm.
who is the new you? And they have to have that person named. They have to be grooming that person. They have to be uh, working with that person to make it so that if that were to happen, they would immediately be replaced by that person that's in the succession plan.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, the way that looks is those things kind of converge, right? Like I've got this 5-year plan. Part of my 5-year plan is to have Joe in place to take my job when I leave.
Right.
And it's what I can see happening is she's putting those pieces in place. She's got Dave, she's got Beck, she's got a team of folks around her. 5-year plan. Let's mature Dave into the role. Let's mature Beck into the role. Let's mature, whoever else. And here's my 5-year plan. Here's my succession plan. I'm
Mhm.
absolutely certain that Disney has a similar kind of structure that JP Morgan Chase did, that at the senior levels of management, you have to have these things in place. You have to. And they're written. They're written. They're not like something that you just think about while you're, daydreaming or driving your
Mhm.
car into work. They have to be written down plans. And you have to be doing things. It's one of these things that in your performance plan, they say, okay, on your 5-year plan, on your succession plan, you said this and this. How's it going? How far are we? Is Dave ready? Right? It's pretty clear, right? Real Ben has a question for you. Says, I was going to send you the other day. So the chief creative officer, right, CCO, currently Dave. Do we know if there was someone else in that position before him? Um, my impression is no, but what do you say?
I don't believe so. I think he just had a different role, and the role has just been changed more than anything. The parameters of it. Like I said, he was just coming in late in development to help with the narrative and help the
Yeah,
filmmakers out. He's now just coming in early in that process.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I don't think I don't think it's a huge deal because Dave was always there to assist. He's just doing it now from an earlier point.
yeah. I don't think Lucasfilm. If we have to remember, Lucasfilm was a company established by George Lucas. I don't think Lucasfilm ever had a position of CCO.
Hmm.
It was never a name position. And I said it earlier. George Lucas was effectually the CCO. It was what was in his brain, and he didn't necessarily, that would change as he went.
Hmm.
It's fine because it was his world. It's his toy box, right? He was doing the things. It's great. But when he sold the company to Disney, I don't think Disney put a CCO in place. And he definitely named Kathleen Kennedy as CEO, but she wasn't doing the CCO role specifically. She
Hmm.
may have had some influence. She may have had some discussions with folks as it went, but I think more or less that was the role of the story group to some degree, but the position was never really defined.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
with Kathy as well. When you look at the sequel trilogy days, she was far more involved in those projects than she has been with the live action series. Granted, we would never have the amount of success we've had with the shows without Kennedy and
yeah.
her foresight to say, Dave and John, you have a lot of creative freedom with the Mandalorian. I
Hmm.
put my trust in you if you deliver this product, and it's worked. It's worked well for Disney and Disney Plus. It launched Disney Plus alongside it, and is arguably their most successful series. And
Yeah.
that's on her trust in her creators, which is what a
Yeah.
president should be doing. It's why
Yeah.
Feige at the moment is struggling at Marvel because he's taken more of a backseat and has letting other producers who used to work under him take a larger role in the TV shows and the movies, and it's not gone well. So to the point where over the breaks that the industry had due to the strikes, he's had to look over everything and say, this isn't good enough. This needs a rewrite, so we're spending more money to rewrite it and reshoot it. We're bringing in more experienced writers to help with these projects. We're doing an overhaul of everything, essentially. You know, the next Captain America movie, he watched that over the strike period and thought it was so bad, or notwithstanding, that they're now going to spend 5 months reshooting that movie from January to June.
Wow.
So, yeah,
That's
you
crazy.
need the right structure in place, and for the amount of, I don't think Kathy's done everything to a great standard, but she's got more wins than losses, in my opinion. And now she's creating a foundation, a corporate foundation, and a structure that will hopefully benefit her, the people underneath her, but more importantly, us as fans, with having Dave come on and help with the narrative, and having Carrie go on and collaborate with the filmmakers and bring them into the fold. And hopefully, they are great stories. The filmmakers they have been bringing in, or that she's been bringing in specifically, I am a fan of. So, yeah, hopefully this is a sign of great things to come at Lucasfilm.
I'm very excited about it. We have another story that I'm quite excited about. I'm a big sequels fan and a big fan of Rey Skywalker. And it says Daisy is yet to read a script, but she knows what the next film, she's been told what it's about, right? Like, hey, we're going to do this story about Rey doing this thing, right? And she's excited about it, and she's a little surprised by it. It said in the story. So this is the Charmin Obaid-Chinoy movie. A lot of people are wondering if she has the chops to do a blockbuster movie for Star Wars, being that the biggest thing that she seems to have done was Miss Marvel.
Yes, it's just documentary work, award-winning documentary work, though. Outside of that,
yeah. So, but you got to think, tie this with the story we just talked about, right? Dave is the CCO. She comes in to direct the movie. It should be noted too that who's she working with here?
Stephen Knight is the writer who took over from Dame Lindelof and Justin Britt Gibson, who would work on the movie for 2 years.
Yeah, perfect. So Stephen Knight's the one that's going to be working with Dave. Dave's going to be working with Stephen, and then of course she is going to come in to direct. She is not the writer director; she is the director. And certainly, she'll have some influence on some of the writing as it goes, but the story itself is Stephen Knight's, and yeah, there it is. There's Kennedy revealed Stephen Knight was due to submit a draft, but then we had that big strike and all of that, right? And it says whether or not Knight has submitted a script remains to be seen, but one person who's not read a script is Daisy Ridley. So, but she did make a comment. The story is really cool. I'm waiting to read a script because obviously I don't have any other updates. It's not what I expected, but I'm very excited. And that was with Collider. What do you think?
I don't think it's surprising she hasn't read a script. So Daisy talked about she was officially hired for the project, or offered the project in January. At that point, we believe Lindelof and Gibson were about to submit a new draft, which is ultimately what got them canned and Knight brought in. My theory is that Knight hasn't submitted a script as of yet. They might just be giving him till the end of the year. Yeah, obviously, and the thing is, when Kennedy said about mid-May he was due to submit a script, she was well aware of the possible writer's strike beginning on May the 2nd. So that script was not going to make it no matter what. So yeah, so I'm not surprised she hasn't read one. I assume Kennedy pitched her on the story, because even though Knight is coming in to pick up and change things from Lindelof and Gibson, we know that Rey was like 89 years old or something in the Lindelof version, and she had 2 students, but like Rey wasn't the lead. It was the 2 students that were the leads. So I imagine the structural changes that are happening, which is why you'd go and get Ridley, so that she is the lead, and then the students are more supporting. In this scenario, I think the likely the plot or the premise is the same. It's Ridley. She has two students. There's probably a threat, and there's a Jedi Order trying to be constructed.
Yeah.
It's just the parameters of Ridley's role is definitely going to be expanded, and there's going to be some other changes. But Lindelof worked on that script for 2 years. I don't think they're throwing away 2 years worth of work at all. And the movie comes out in 2026, which means they probably need to film before the end of next year, to get that out in time. So Stephen Knight has far less time than Lindelof had developing it, which makes me think that they're keeping with probably most of the story. It's just So
Yeah. And Nick's going off of the greenlit discussion you and Jason had the other day. That was very funny.
It didn't stop there. It continued on Fortnite. It kept going.
I was like, it was hilarious. It was hilarious.
Had to get other people involved, like sources. We got sources involved.
If you guys missed it, you got to go back and catch Making Star Wars show earlier this week. And they went on a tangent about green light, what's been greenlit, and what's the definition of greenlit. And Jason and Bestman were, and Rob.
Rob just sat back and enjoyed himself, Santa. He was just laughing and just happy somebody else was arguing with Jason other than him.
Real Ben says greenlit is a trigger word for me now. Oh, it's so funny. But yes, has the film been greenlit? So you're basically agreeing with what Daisy said. She said, I imagine it'll be the next film to be released. I don't know the post strikes and everything, how quickly things will start up. And that's probably right.
Yeah. The plan as I knew it, pre-strikes, were that they were going to start casting and hopefully get a lot of cast in place by Labor Day, which obviously they couldn't do, and to ultimately begin filming in April at Pinewood. That's no longer the case. So, they probably need a script to be handed in likely before the end of the year. He might already have submitted one. She just may not have read it. They might have given notes and he's working on another draft. But I imagine that it will film next year. She won't get an update till they are happy with a draft, I assume. But it's not a surprise that she doesn't know. She probably has a rough idea because they're gonna ask her to keep a section of her schedule clear. And as she mentions, she believes that is the next movie, which likely tells you that she's been told to keep a specific block of time free for this movie. It's been long rumored and reported, whether through me, through Jason, through the trades, Jeff Snyder, that the Rey movie is the next movie. It is May 2026. We don't know if that will get delayed, but that's the current plan. And Jason said it in the latest Snyder, which was Kathy's job sort of depends on getting this movie out. So I think this movie will definitely come out. No matter what.
And it also supports what you said about her contract getting extended. Typically, when you have a producer, they're going to stay until their projects have been produced. And I heard an industry person really talking about this, that if you change producers midstream, typically the new guy will just vacate all the old guy's stuff and they start clean. So at this point, these are her projects. She's going to stay to see them through and then have this transition process, as we talked about. And we'll see how that comes through. But I totally agree with you when it comes to extending her contract. It's not going to end in 2024. She's going to stay on, and it's just going to keep. She's going to keep molding her succession plan. right?
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
going to stay on path, and that's just how it's going to go.
And people need to realize she's like in her 70s, so she's not going to be president forever. You know, look at how fast like it's been 4 years since the Rise of Skywalker. Look how fast time has gone, and how many movies she's tried to get developed over there. Aria asks in the chat, how long does approving a script process take? Because the guy was going to submit his draft before the strike hit, and he was going to submit during the strike. Was the plan? Mid-May is when he was supposed to submit the draft. It's not approving the script. It's so on May 2nd, I think everybody had to turn in what they already had. So you couldn't be accused of scabbing and working during the strike. So whatever he had on May the 2nd, he had to let go of, and the WJ could see what he had done, and that's the process. He had to stop work. He couldn't pick up the work again till the end of September, and we're only 2 months away from that. If I'm Lucasfilm, and this guy, he's going to, the next draft is going to be so important. Again, they might have already had it. We don't know. They might be moving on to his second draft. But this guy probably spent a lot of the time when he wasn't able to write thinking about this movie and thinking about the process of this movie. And
exactly.
You got to remember as well that Charmin Obey-Chenoy, she wasn't on strike. She's on board as a director. She could continue to take these meetings with Lucasfilm and impose this vision about what they want. So when Knight does come back, they have all these ideas and ambitions ready to give to him, which he could then implement. Yeah. They could just be telling Knight to take his time. There's no real rush now because we're not going to do April. We're not going to film in April anymore. So we don't need you to get this ready for that date. It could.
Right.
The strikes went on for 4 months for the writers. If we just add that to the allocated time they were supposed to have for filming, that could be that we wait till August till filming begins.
Right.
So his deadline is likely set further back as well now than what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
It's like The Mandalorian. That was supposed to film in September. It's now going to film early next year. Things take a bit of time to get back up and going. You got to think at Pinewood as well. They have all these other projects that people have been shipped onto, whether it's like UK productions, for example, or just the priorities have shifted around. It's starting from, well, not scratch, but close to, Yeah.
It totally makes sense. And all these dates have been pushed. Nobody expects that initial calendar to be the one they stick to. We've got another story coming up, the one you released today, about the Disney Plus schedule, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Before that, you have a whiplash story, right? It's it's just the nature of how things go, right? There was a story you published, and you DM'd me last Friday saying, "Hey,
I can't tell you how much joy I had watching the streams and with the what was the headline quote I used? As like, how is he going to handle this?" And better than doo-doo.
I heard you guys talk about it yesterday. How I wouldn't say certain words, and I'm just reading it, and then Jason's trying to get me to go back and reread it correctly, and I just wouldn't do it. No, not. But I'm way too close to Christmas. So I can't be doing that stuff.
Jason told me I gave up on life by the time I finished writing this article. He was like, the final paragraph, you were just done with life. Like, I was like,
well, so you published the article a week ago that said it's dead. It's dead, Jim. Yeah. Right? Like, take the quote from Star Trek, right? There's no life left in it. Then we see here on the 22nd, 2 days ago, it's actually not dead. No. There's life in it. Now, that being said, it's not exactly like it's out there running a marathon or anything. I would say it's probably an ICU. Right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Like they just pulled it out of the morgue and put it back in ICU. So the gist of this is that, Sony is done. Is that, am I reading it right? Sony.
Yeah. Yeah, Sony. So the way that so Jeff Grubb is the one who did the "Deader Than Doo-Doo" quote from last week,
Right.
and his whole stance was he believed it was done, and he later came out to clarify his comments because obviously he made big headlines when you use the term "Deader Than Doo-Doo." So yeah, he said that from his point of view and from all his sources, which are Sony based and PlayStation based, this project should die because Sony are desperate to get out of the deal. They weren't happy with the demo that was shown months ago. They're not happy with the progress that's happened since. They want out, and they have co-publishing rights for it, and they are the ones basically financing the project. So if you remove Sony, who is giving you the money to make this, it stands to reason that you're not going to be able to make it, right? So you can understand Jeff's point of view as to why he thought it would be dead. Jason Schreier came out and spoke to two sources at Saber Interactive who took over the production of KOTOR Remake from Aspire, who were the ones who produced the demo, which Sony didn't like, but apparently Lucasfilm did. And yeah, they're claiming they're still working on it. Now, if you're Saber and you're seeing all these headlines and, you probably want to get it out there somehow that, yeah, we're still doing this. So, and again, even though Sony want to get out, there's all these people that are employed by Embracer Group who own Saber Interactive. They're still going to be working on something. Like, it's going to take a long time for this game to officially die, if it does die, because Sony just can't exit the deal. There's a lot more to do there. It'll take a long time. It'll be a long process. I don't know if this will ever happen. I do believe that the people at Saber are probably still working on this in some form, whether it's a skeleton crew of people working on it at the moment. Sony are fighting to get out. But both Jeff and Schreier sort of agree that without a big company or somebody funding it like Sony, they don't see how this happens. Embracer Group, like specifically, are having a very bad time, like financially. So they can't fit the bill for this production. They have to have a co-publisher. They have to have somebody who's co-financing the project like Sony. This was offered to Microsoft, and they turned it down before it went to Sony. Oh. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But my expectations on this happening is low. Even Schreier himself says that. Is the game alive, and if the game will ever be released, are two different questions with two different answers. So even the ones who are saying that, yeah, it's currently being worked on, don't he even have enough confidence to say it will one day be released?
Gotcha. Well, we shall see. We shall see. It just there's another thing in here I wanted to point out. Just like last week's article, there were things I'm not going to read. This one I'm not going to read either, and that these two sentences come back to back had to make Jason and Meg just giddy with joy.
You can say that word. You can say that.
I'm not reading that. It has too much innuendo within it. between the first sentence and the second sentence, there's just too much there.
Yeah, I tried to do a callback to this towards the end of the article, but I said this story sucks me dry of life. So again, I can't lie. I had you in mind when I wrote this. Specifically you, because of the doo-doo nonsense. So
it's fantastic. It's absolutely gold. So I was surprised that they didn't lean into that a little more to give me more hard time.
But yeah, as I've said before, I write things specifically for Jason in some of these articles. But I also write things in there specifically for you as well.
So, thank you for that. Yeah. When I read that, I was like, I couldn't miss it. I mean,
no.
It's like, I'm not reading that. I'm not doing it.
We'll stick to titular. You'll read that.
It's your favorite word. Yeah. It says Dave Filoni hopes to make season 2. Now, in the previous article about him being promoted to CCO, was specifically in there that and this is part of the greenlight the discussion. Ahsoka 2 has not been greenlit. However,
I hate this greenlight discussion.
you
I was
guys
so
started
confused,
it.
but when you were saying this to me, I'm like, what is he on about? Like, yeah. No, so 2 is not being greenlit. Or, like, unofficially green. I don't know. It's just not happening at the moment.
Where's Jason to fight with us about it?
He's got a plan. He's got, like, outlines, but it's not greenlit, and it's whatever it is.
So yeah, he teases there is a plan, and now he's the CCO, and you would think that the CCO would have some say in it, getting done. Oh my goodness! Yeah, that show the other day that's just ruined it.
Oh yeah. I can't hear that term anymore.
I could look. I sympathize with you guys.
I was at a red light the other day and it turned green. I had flashbacks. I had to pull over.
Oh no! Oh my goodness! It says the topic of a second season was brought up in the piece. Filoni remained tight-lipped about the second season yet to be greenlit.
Oh, no,
there it is.
Why? You highlighted that on purpose. I know you did. I know you did. You pre-planned it.
I did. Just like the other one that I said I'm not going to talk about. There it is.
We've even triggered Ben with this. Ben said he's triggered.
Triggered. That's right.
I'm going to start a support group for us, Ben. You know, we'll do it through Discord.
Yeah, take it to Jason's Discord. There you go. Just blow that up with the discussion. It says he's tight-lipped about it's being greenlit. It says he once again is making around to discuss season 1. Now that the strike's over, right? They can talk about it. And as you'd expect, the discussion came up. It says Ahsoka season 1 wrapped up. Second season's yet to be greenlit. Look, twice in the same article you have it in there. So
I know. It's my own fault. I'm a worst enemy.
EW asked Filoni the prospect of a second season, and they'd like to see a resolution. Filoni gave a very Filoni answer, basically not answering the question, but giving the interviewer enough to chew on. His quote is below. It says, "I've set up several threads that can continue. If not, I feel like, well, at least I got Ezra home. And that was really important. But there's always a plan. I hope one day we'll see it. It could be very cool. And it took a while to get Ahsoka done. So you never know. Always in motion, the future is, right?" And he jokes about saying that like Yoda. That article is, well, it ties in. Their issue has a lot of content in it, and it goes on to talk about Ray Stevenson and Ray Stevenson's view of Balin and Dave and how well that all went. And I think not only are we curious about what's going on with those main storylines. There's, like you said, there's several threads, right? There's the thread with Ezra. There's a thread with Ahsoka and Sabine. Then there's what's going on with Shin and, of course, Balin. And will they recast? That's really at the bottom of it. Will they recast Balin's skull to continue his story? And just nobody knows. There's lots of speculation, but that's
in the article that I wrote. I think there's 3 ways they go about it. 1 is a recast, 2 is AI, and 3 is his story continues off screen, and we just feel the ramifications of it. I hope the latter doesn't happen. I hope. Right, so they with like Marvel, they refused to recast T'Challa, Black Panther. I personally
Yeah.
thought that was the wrong move.
Yeah.
I thought that the legacy of that character and what Boseman brought to it should carry on instead of just saying this is his for life. We're never going to use the character again. Because I think that character was so beloved by fans, and I think it deserves to go on. I think Balin's character, he was a highlight of that show, and fans warmed to him and Stevenson's portrayal instantly. I think whoever you get, if you did recast it, has some humongous boots to fill in
Yeah.
Stevenson, and it's always going to be an uphill battle. But I think not following the Balin story because it was so interesting and so seemingly intrinsical to the plot of maybe Ahsoka 2 and even the movie, I think you should follow up, and I think the character deserves that as well.
Yeah.
The other way they could go about it is AI, where they treat it the similar way to they've done with Luke Skywalker, where you have an actor physically be there, but you obviously deepfake the Stevenson face onto it and use AI for the voice. That could be another way to go, but I think that could be part of the problem of season 2 going forward. Like Dave said at the moment, like in another interview, that he's planning it. He has ideas of the second season, but surely the Stevenson and Balin issue really hampers that development, because you need to decide what you're going to do with that character before you can truly commit to writing a script and writing a treatment for that second season or even the movie. So the issue of Balin needs to be resolved, I think, before the script really gets developed.
Yeah.
And then in the article as well, I lay out that Ahsoka took 6 months to film, took around between 9 and 10 months to release after. Mando 3 took 6 months to film, took a year in post-production. And Filoni's movie is supposed to be out in December 2026. That's a lot to do in, what, less than 2 years? Really?
At the same time, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying that's a lot to do at the same time. Supposed to do an Ahsoka 2, a Mando 4, and a movie at the same time. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah. So Mando's supposed to be early next year. That's going to take probably 6 months. And then I don't see like based off of what Filoni has said where they are, I don't see Ahsoka filming within, if it does get, the go ahead, that it won't film to the latter half of the year. So
this has been a point of discussion and one that I argue with folks about, because again, it's one thing that people read into stories that isn't there.
right.
And if you go back and you read the specific words that were said and you listen to the interviews of what was actually talked about, what is being reported often doesn't match up. And one of these things is that the movie, Dave's movie, will end Ahsoka's story. I don't think that's true. That's not what he said. If you go back, it's the culmination of all these coming together. Nothing says that coming out of it, there still won't be stories to tell from that.
Right.
It's very possible that an Ahsoka season 2 could come after the movie. And there's no rule that says that that couldn't happen. The difficulty is how that this is ended with Ahsoka being out in Peridia.
Right.
And the movie continuing the story without her. Or it includes her, but we don't find out how she gets there. Like, there's a lot to bring into that movie. Either she just is there, or part of the movie has to be devoted to getting her there, or like there's tons of things. They'll work that out. And if that means that the Filoni movie gets pushed from 26 to 27 or 28, then I wouldn't throw that off the table either.
No, and they could do that as well. They have an untitled Star Wars movie dated for December 2027. Filoni could get delayed, and Disney will just use that December 26th date for another movie of theirs. It could just be a
Yes.
Marvel movie or something. But the other thing, I think Ahsoka 2 will happen, but there's the possibility that it doesn't. And some of those story threads that were planned for the second season get interwoven into Mando 4 or the Filoni movie, just as some of the Ranger stories did for Mandalorian Season 3, as Kennedy said that they did. Because if Ahsoka 2 doesn't happen, I wouldn't be extremely surprised, because you've been over the viewing figures as well when I wrote the entire thing for Jason a few weeks back. The numbers weren't bad. They were sort of middling. They weren't awful. They weren't amazing. It was less than Boba Fett, less than Obi-Wan, less than Mando. So Disney, they're in this weird place at the moment where they're losing a lot of money. The Marvels right now, going to lose them hundreds of millions. Indiana Jones, same thing. Ant-Man, same thing.
They've got like 5 projects this year that fell short, right? The animated movie earlier in the year, then Indiana Jones, then the Marvels, then
they got Wish about to come out now, which is getting middling reviews. Like the Marvels
Wish
cost
is not doing well, right?
Yeah, the Marvels cost $275 million to make, and it's looking to only make 210 to 230 when all said and done. So that's hundreds of millions lost. Same thing with Indiana Jones.
Live action Little Mermaid, that was the 5th one I was thinking of.
Yeah, so they're in a position now where they're tightening their belts and trying to cut budgets and save money where they can. So if they look at the Ahsoka numbers, it's like, well, what's the return on this for us? Will this generate us more subscribers? Will we retain more subscribers? Is it worth us doing a second season? Or can this be used in a movie? Because as I understand it, next year they're sort of banking on Deadpool 3 to be a big money hit for them. In 2025, they're looking at Fantastic Four. Even though they've got a bunch of other Marvel films, it's Fantastic Four that they're hoping is the moneymaker. At 2026, it's Star Wars and Avengers. So their hopes for the next 3 years are Star Wars and Marvel in the theaters. So they could be like, well, that Filoni movie, we want it to happen. We're going to give you, enough money to it, and hopefully it makes us money. We know roughly what the built-in audience is. They'll come and see it. They probably estimate they'll have at least a certain amount. And maybe they say, well, interweave what you were going to do for season 2 into this. It could just be that. I hope it's not. I hope that we get a second season, because I think that was the plan.
There's something that I think needs discussed more. It's been touched on so many times, but let's take Indiana Jones for an example, just as a use case, right? Lost money at the theater. It made money at the theater, but it didn't make back its budget. But it's then been released to digital release. It'll be released in physical release, and it's definitely going to Disney Plus. And there's this discussion about people going to theatrical releases or not, and saying, I'll just wait for it to come on the streaming platform, which means they're retaining their subscribership for the streaming platform. If that's the case, right? Like, I'm not going to spend an additional $15 or, by the time you get there, buy the popcorn and the drinks and all that. I'm not going to spend $50 to go see the movie at the theater. I'll watch it at home in 3 months, 2 months, whatever. That means they're retaining their subscription, and that has to be baked into how these projects end up hitting the books. At the end of the day, between merchandising, digital sales, physical sales, and streaming revenue, how deep in the hole will Indiana Jones be? How do you figure that?
I don't think that they. So typically, they don't make a ton. Like nowhere near the equivalent of what they would make in a theater from the digital
Oh,
releases,
sure,
or renting,
sure.
or wherever else. So if Indiana Jones costs around 300 to 330 million, depending on which report you believe, it probably it has a large marketing budget. It probably needed to make around 700 million to become profitable.
Right.
It capped out at 383, I believe, theatrically, worldwide. Um, so yeah, like they still need to generate around another probably 350 to 400 million in to start to become profitable, which I don't think they'll do.
Mhm.
With the renting and the buy-in, and then the physical releases. And it's the same thing with so Jason. He's the biggest Indiana Jones fan I know.
Yeah.
He bought Indiana Jones the other day for a decent price, the newest one.
Yeah.
But as he's not being serviced on Disney Plus, he is willing to get rid of Disney Plus until Star Wars
Right.
comes back.
Right.
And you know, and as he said, that a deal popped out, which was you can sign up to Hulu for 99 cents a month for a year, right? Or you can add Disney Plus to it for a total of $2.99 a month for an entire year. So
Oh,
he was like, okay, well that's going to entice me to sign up. But if it
yeah.
wasn't for that deal, a massive Star Wars fan, a massive Indiana Jones fan, he wasn't going to stick with Disney Plus for Indiana Jones. He wasn't going to stay there just for that one movie.
Right.
And I think that's how a lot of people are at the moment with the price increase of Disney Plus as well. That's just happened
Oh, yeah.
in the States. It's
Yeah.
about to happen in the UK. And the lack of content for us as Star Wars fans specifically, what real motivation do we have to stay subscribed if we don't know when the next show is coming, and we believe it's months away, like. So you're better off going and buying if you subscribe to Disney Plus just for the Star Wars movies, you're better off just going and picking up at store. It's Black Friday. You're probably going to find them for a decent price.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think Indiana Jones or the Marvels going to Disney Plus is going to necessarily retain subscribers. And I don't think that. I think both movies are like they've failed so badly at the box office that at home can't save them now.
Well, there's
Um,
the key. There's the key.
yeah.
So is that they can afford to, like, if the box office is forever changed, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
forever changed because people are saying, I'll just wait to stream it. Let's just assume that that is a part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to have a subscriber base that helps fill in the gaps. If
Mm-hmm.
you dip too low, you can't pull that back up. Indiana
Right.
Jones and the Marvels both may be examples of that. That even with the streaming revenue and the digital sales, they're still going to end up way short by tens
Mm-hmm.
or hundreds of millions in combined. When you start to add up these losses in a row, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
so many in a row that they've got to figure out how to resonate with audiences more in order to get the theatrical revenue up so
Mm-hmm.
that these other forms can fill in the gap. And Aria asked,
Right.
what's the pros and cons to releasing a movie day one on Disney Plus and the theaters? They played with that during COVID with the whole, you can pay like, I can't remember what it was, $12.99 or something like that
Yeah.
to buy the rights to watch it like at home,
Yeah.
or maybe it was close to $20. I
It was
can't
closer
remember.
to 20 because I remember at the time it was the choice between Black Widow, going and watching at home, spending the extra money going to the cinema and paying less. I chose at the time to go to the cinema, and I deeply regretted it because there was a bunch of terrible teenagers in it, and the things they were shouting at the screen I could not repeat on this show.
Right.
So, and to the point where everybody else in my screening was going and complaining to staff, and I was like, I wish I just paid the extra money just to sit at home and watch it comfortably.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is with the studios now, you see it a lot of times now. They're trying to go back to the old ways of things. You know, you're seeing it with. So there was a period when the streaming stuff was first introduced, and COVID was rampant in 2020, where they were trying to shorten the window, and they struck deals with the theater chains to shorten the window from cinema to digital. You know, and now they're widening that again. They were almost at the time getting rid of like the physical side of things, but
Yeah.
now they're now more dependent on it. So it's going back to the old way of theater, digital, physical, streaming. Whereas
Yeah.
before, when it would hit digital, it would hit streaming basically the same day. But now
Yep.
they're trying to take advantage of that smaller window for digital.
Yep.
And you see it then with streaming, where they are pricing the things they were giving us to us for a fair, what I believe was a fair price earlier on, which was like you get 4K, you get like there's no ads, any of this. Now it's like, oh, you want 4K and you don't want ads, you got to pay a premium. Because what they want now
Yes.
is they want you to pay for the ad version because they get paid twice
Yeah.
for that. You know,
Right. Right.
and that's what all they're about at the moment. And again, it's like, well, you're paying Disney directly. I don't know what the price is in the States. I'm going to assume $6 for the ad version. There's $6. Here's my money, and also here's the money from the ad revenue. Like, that's what they
Yeah.
want. They're trying
Yeah.
to make as much money as they can now from streaming. And
And
today
if
I'm
they
taking
could,
Mhm.
the advantage of like that $20 premiere to get a watch it at home, right?
Yeah.
That they experimented with. It in theory gives them an opportunity for higher revenue because it's like 50% of ticket sales at the end of the day is what they kind of get. It's a rough number. It's not exactly that, but it's close enough.
Yeah.
For discussion. So, 500 million in ticket sales only nets them 250 million.
Mhm.
On a streaming platform, you've still got the cost associated with hosting. There's certain costs associated with it, but it's nowhere near 50%. So to get that same 250 from a streaming premium, say $20, they don't need 500 million in that. They maybe need 325 million, something. I don't know. You got to figure that out. And then is there a profit proposition to that? It would seem right now the answer to that's no. That they're still way more lucrative to release in the box office. I think Ben has touched on a thing that they need to realign what these budgets are doing. Like back in when a blockbuster was going to hit $1 billion, then you can let the budget kind of grow and still make your money. But they get these budgets in line. It's the same for streaming, same for these movies. They just can't allow these budgets to balloon like they have been. And like you said, with Feige going back on this last movie and doing how many months of reshoots?
5, just going from January to June.
Good night. That's not cheap.
That's probably the entire movie. When you think about it.
Like a replay of Solo, right? Like, yeah, the movie was almost done and you're starting over. Like, yikes. So yeah, I want to move on. We got a couple other stories to cover. We've only gotten halfway there, I think. It's been a big news week. 3 live action series reportedly for 2024. That's a big deal because I think Jason and I would kind of speculating about it before that maybe it would only be 2. To have 3 is pretty exciting. So we've and I don't know if there's I haven't read the article. I saw it come out. You posted it on Thanksgiving Day. I didn't go read it.
Yeah.
I was too busy eating. But anyway,
no, that's the problem with like that is because like most people aren't going to read it because of obviously most of my traffic, and I think most Star Wars content creators' traffic comes from Americans. So yeah, that's always to factor in. The thing is with this article, which I touch on throughout it, is this comes from Empire magazine, and I don't. My belief is, and I have no evidence of this, that they've just assumed this, because we know the Acolyte is 2024. It's on the trailer that was shown at Celebration. They've spoken about it. Skeleton Crew was supposed to be this year and it got delayed into next year. So it's natural that that's 2024. And Andor was always announced to be 2024. So I think it's just an assumption on their part. Because they don't mention having spoken to Lucasfilm and have that as the understanding, right?
Okay.
I think it's all assumed. So, and I put that in this article. But I reference a lot in this article mine from September, when I was the first to report the Skeleton Crew is delayed. Like, it was supposed to be the end of November this year, and it got delayed to next year, possibly up to an entire year, which is what I wrote then.
Yes.
So all this stuff I heard in August. And I teased it on Jason's show before I wrote it, when I told some people, like, hey, I'm not going to be subscribing to Disney Plus much longer after Loki ends. And whatnot. But, so, as I understand it, so this is going to be mostly from August, and this is like, I've said, I was the first one to say any of this stuff, and then Jason heard it, like, I think a couple months later from independent sources that definitely not, like, associated with each other. I heard it that from one source, the Skeleton Crew could be up to a year. So that would mean November next year. And that was like the doomsday scenario, essentially. Acolyte, I reported months ago that it was supposed to be Q2 2024, but it could suffer a slight delay. And all these delays are due to the strikes. And my personal speculation was August, because that to me seems slight. And Lucasfilm like the August date. They like, well, Ahsoka released there, and Andor was supposed to release there twice. Obviously, it got delayed in 2022 to September. So that's just my own speculation. And then Andor has a couple of weeks left to film. I don't know when they're going back. I assume it's next year. So they're going to go back and do some of that. But just like most studios were doing, in the period where the actors were still striking, but the writers weren't, a lot of people were looking over the projects they already had. This was happening at Marvel, and seeing what wasn't working, what needed to be reshot, needed some pickups, some things, or even just rewrite scenes. Tony Gilroy could have done that, because they had to film 2 months without Gilroy being on set, because he couldn't, because of the writer's strike. So he might be unhappy with how certain things have come out on film in the production process. So he might want to rewrite some stuff, which means those 2 or 3 weeks could become a month, could become 2 months, which obviously would then impact the release schedule. At the time when I was told stuff in August, I was told it was either going to be very, very late 2024 or more likely early 2025. February was the one I heard. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I've asked for updates and clarification in more recent weeks, but I haven't really seen any. With Skeleton Crew, it's weird because that one source still says it might be November. I've seen a hint from another thing that that points to it, which I can't talk about. And then I've seen there's a document online that you can see, and it says for merchandise stuff in July or something. And then there was a Lego set that was rumored to be out in June. So it's all over the place. I personally don't think they have the plan set right now. I think it's still up in the air.
Gotcha.
And as I understood it back in August, Mando pre-strikes and post-strikes was always 2025, just slightly later in 2025. So yeah, that article from September is still relevant.
I see what you're saying, and I think there's 4 projects. I mean, 3 live action, but the Bad Batch final season is also part of the schedule. The people keep bantering about maybe another season. There's nothing tangible around that I've heard yet.
Well, I was told stuff about Bad Batch and Tales went in the August thing. I just didn't
Okay.
put it out. So there's an update for that. Like I will put that out. Like
Excellent.
so, there's Star Wars content, next year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But yeah, so Visions and Tales are the ones I've not heard anything tangible on. Lots of speculation,
Yeah.
but nothing tangible. The tangible bits are those four. Is Bad Batch, and then Acolyte, and then Skeleton Crew, and then Andor. But likely in that order, would you say?
Right now, I would say the order I said in September, because I've had no update, which would be Bad Batch, Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, Andor.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That's
Yeah.
that's how I was reading it as well.
Yeah.
Very good. So,
As I said, that article I wrote in September, like when I first broke any of this, and like I heard it, like, and then like I said, Jason heard it like a couple months after I did. And obviously, at the time, I was told this before I wrote about it in August. I told Jason because I teased it on the show, and I told him off air, and Rob, who was also there, and I've also told him the Bad Batch and Tail stuff as well. It's just waiting to put that out at the right time. Because certain times of the year gives you more money on the ads, Santa. So
hey, look, I get it, my friend.
And but yeah, at the moment, this is the thing. There was a weird thing that was peddled on like Reddit and social media that Skeleton Crew would be January. It's never January. I asked sources, and they all just pretty much laughed or scoffed at me and were like, never. Like the absolute earliest could be spring as a possibility, and that wasn't even them saying it's spring. It's just because of all the market and everything that needs to go into preparation before it.
Things have to get scheduled. I always align it to like getting contractors to build a house. You've got the plumbers scheduled to come in February, but you don't have the framing up. So now you get the framing up in February. The plumber's already got several other jobs. He can't get back until April.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then guess what? You're not getting your drywall up before that, right? So it's the same idea that you have to work through some of these things before you could get to that.
It's sad to think we were very close to Skeleton Crew. We could have been watching Skeleton Crew next week or the week after, and now we might have to wait a year. So.
Yeah. I got getting updates from the kiddo headed here from Missouri, so that you hear my phone going off. Taika Waititi, we got another story from him. Now, people need to understand a thing about Taika. He's got a sense of humor, and he doesn't mind trolling folks, and he doesn't mind trolling himself. So last week he got some people riled up saying my movie's going to make people mad. That's not exactly what he said. No. The internet's going to internet. You know what I mean? It's just crazy. I took it as him understanding the Star Wars fandom, that no matter what you do, somebody's going to be triggered. And it's the nature of the internet. All right. It's the nature of the world we live in.
Everybody.
Absolutely not. And this franchise has grown beyond the original trilogy. And even during the original trilogy, it began to fracture off. And then you add the prequels and it fractures. And like it's growing as a fandom, but it becomes more and more fractured as a fandom. So there's nothing you can put into the sphere that's going to universally make everybody happy. Mandalorian season 1 was fantastic, and it happened. It's one of these lightning in a bottle situations that we were in a COVID situation. Everybody's stuck at home, and it was new. It was exciting, and it gave people things to talk about. It drove the platform. There's tons of things that'll be done for decades, maybe more, on how the impact of COVID to our society as a whole. Like, there's going to be tons of research on it over the years. Like I say, for decades, maybe more, and understanding that. And I think certainly Mandalorian season 1, in that it was so universal. And then as we come out of the pandemic, we begin to fracture again, right? And it's just more and more of the same. It really is. And people, that's where I got in a bit of a scuff with my friend Meg on her Discord, because she's talking about what a dire situation Star Wars is in. I'm like, shut your mouth. No, I didn't say that. I was just like, I don't think it's in as dire a situation as it's being painted to be. When you start to look at everything, all right, I'm old. I've been around. And I remember the late 80s. And when I graduated high school in 1985. And many of you folks weren't born yet. but in 1985, I graduated high school. It also marked 84 and 85 when those Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventures came out. We also had, in that same time frame, the Ewok animated series, the Droid animated series, and go back to 1985. Go back to 1986, 1987, and look at the state of the Star Wars franchise. It may be the height, right? When everybody looks back and says, wow, that original trilogy changed movies forever. Not just its genre, but movies as a whole forever. The height of it. But if you were to grade the franchise based off of coming out of those movies and what we got in 1985, 86, 87, in that time frame, you would have thought, and if you could move that into today's kind of culture, the franchise would have been a huge dumpster fire that was in much worse state than it is today. Because that wasn't good. It wasn't good. No. And so it's just to try to put where we are today with this these Disney Plus series and how well they're being received by the fandom as a whole, and each one hits differently with different groups.
Right.
I've liked everything so far. Some I like more than others, but I haven't aggressively disliked anything yet. Right. So some of it I'm just like, that wasn't great. But that's me. So Taika comes out and says, well, my movie, it'll just make people mad. Well, right. Of course it's going to make people mad because it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
I don't think he was saying, I'm going to make a movie because I want to make people mad. And I'm going to make a movie intentionally to make people mad. I don't think that's...
I also think there's a tinge of the response to the Thor Love and Thunder movie last year. Like, he put that out and there was a lot of negativity from some of the Marvel fans. You know, and I think that's trickled into the Star Wars fandom where they don't want a Taika movie now based off of that movie. So I think when he says, like, oh, it'll, like, annoy people, it'll make people mad, I think because he says before it's going to be a Taika Waititi film, and it'll make people mad. So I think that's a part of it. But again, Taika, as he is as a person, like, he's very sarcastic and jokey, and, you know, he's not from the States. Like,
right.
He's from, like, New Zealand, right? So
right.
His whole humor is different. His whole, you know, upbringing, his persona is different to one of an American. So a lot of what he said goes over people's heads. And I think the one thing I didn't like about the Variety piece, what he mentions his movie will make people mad, is that there was just a written piece. There was no video. And Taika, like, you can tell when he's joking. You know, like, it was the story from in the summer where he presented Sean Levy with an award, and he joked that, hey, maybe this guy will actually get a Star Wars movie made. And people took the quote without watching the video and was like, oh, he's saying his movie won't get made. But you watch it, he's joking. It's Taika. That's what he does.
Right.
He's running around the Shrek like swamp in Scotland dressed as Shrek. Like, he's a guy who has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I think he was joking. And I think this week, like with this article, he went on the Kelly Clarkson show and talked about his movie.
Yeah.
And I think after a week of the headlines, becoming a thing, and then his movie Next Goal Wins, which he's promoting, not doing well at the box office. It's only made 2.6 million so far, and the critical reception being negative as well. It's at 42% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think when he approached this interview, he was a lot more grounded and soft-spoken, and probably honest about what he was doing, because it's not the sort of show where you can just go and like say the comment about annoying people, but also he's coming off of what might be considered for him a disappointment. He had how many films? 4 films, I think, that were all critically acclaimed. What We Do in the Shadows, Hunt for the Wilder People, Jojo Rabbit, and Thor Ragnarok. He's now on 2 back-to-back, which has been middling or divisive, in Love and Thunder and Next Goal Wins. So I think he's at a place now where he, in that interview, he's talking a bit more serious. He's not making a big song and dance about it and a joke. He's telling it how he feels. But in the quote, he mentions that he's taking his time with it, and he's going to bubble along as Lucasfilm released their other movies. And this goes back to an article I think you covered last week, which was he's going to write 4 films before refocusing his efforts on his Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And at the time as well, he said that with that, like, because he was asked about a possibility of a Thor 5, and he's like, if I ever went and did a Marvel movie or a Thor movie again, it would be after all of this. It'd be after the Star Wars movie and the other 4 films. And he said you wouldn't see that until like 2031, which probably tells you, in his mind, he's looking at this Star Wars movie as being very late in the 2010s, 2020, sorry, or early 2030s. We're ways off of it. I watched an interview with him just the other day where he said he's fatigued with making big blockbuster movies at the moment, and he wants to go and make smaller movies for the time being. Which you can probably understand, because he did the 2 Thor movies back to back. And so I like Taika. I like him as a personality. I think he's funny. I don't like most of his movies. So I hope we see this one day. And I also think people forget about the Mandalorian finale he directed.
Well, there you go. Yeah, yeah. And he's done a great job in-house, right? Like within Lucasfilm, in the in-house projects, he's done a great job in the episodes of Mandalorian he's directed, and he's had fun. And I look forward to it. And Meg covered this on her show today, her channel. The interview with Kelly Clarkson, and she played part of it in her clip. You get a sense for what he's talking about. And you quoted it here. It says you can read his comments below. It says, yeah, I've been developing for a few years with them at Lucasfilm, but with any film, they want it particular, right? And it's something I want to get right. It says, he's not saying it's something I want. When I get it right, it'll make people mad. That's not what he said, right?
No.
I don't want to rush it. I'm going to bubble along on the side. It's exciting, right? He's also not saying like, I'm done with this or anything like that. I've got more important things to do. It's exciting. I want to capture the joy and entertainment of these early ones, like The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, all of those. So I'm trying to figure it out, but it will happen. Right. So look, this is a great comment. And when you hear him talk to Kelly about it, you get that in the inflection of what he's talking about. So like you, I'm hoping that we do get to see it. I am not a big a fan of his Thor movies. Like I didn't really care for Ragnarok. And I know that makes me an outlier, but and I tried to watch What We Do in the Shadows. It's not for me either, but that's fine. And I refuse to watch Jojo Rabbit because I know what it's about, and I just no, I'm not gonna. I'm just because of my emotional health.
Yeah.
I'm just not in a place to want to watch something like that. That's gonna be that difficult for me to just absorb, right? Like it's not because I'm going to hate it. It's just because I am not an emotionally. My emotional health is an issue I deal with all the time, and it's something that I struggle with, and I'm under treatment for it, and I had to take medication for it, and I go to church and I pray, and people are praying for me. It's something that is a steady thing that I work with. And I am not going to expose myself to this movie because I'm aware of what it's about, and I just can't. I just can't. Right? I'm. It's not going to happen. But I do very much look forward to him doing something, and I'm not gonna jump on the bandwagon that everything's terrible. Rick says Jojo Rabbit isn't that heavy. You can watch it and feel good. Can I though? I'm aware of a scene with shoes. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah. So
I'm aware of a scene with shoes, and I'm like that scene. I'm like, I'm out.
So the whole thing with Taika, and this is the thing he says, is with his movies, he always aims for comedy, but with heart. So there's always an emotional resonance in his movies. And as you said, the shoe scene is a heavy moment in a film that is tinged with a lot of comedy. Taika Waititi in that movie is running around as Hitler. Taika Waititi is dressed as Hitler. Like, it's absurd in its nature. That he's just a figment of this one boy's imagination. And it's... Again, it was critically acclaimed. People liked it. But it has heavy moments. Taika's latest movie, Next Girl Wins, I don't think it's a great movie, but there's a moment which is heavy. And, I think if you watch that movie today, Next Girl Wins, there's a moment that will affect you specifically, Santa, that might be too heavy for you in that moment because of something you've gone through recently. So, I think for certain movies, especially for certain people, you've got to be in the right mindset for that movie. If you feel, based on what you know about the Jojo Rabbit movie at this moment, that it'll be too heavy for you, you wait until you're in a better mindset or, in a lighter mood, because, it affects everybody differently. And that's the thing. Like, I suffer with mental health issues. I have anxiety and depression and whatever else. And, I feel that, like, sometimes you got to put yourself in the right frame of mind to get through something is going to be heavy. So,
like I watched The Bridge to Terabithia, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
Not that the movie was horrible, but what it did to me was horrible. Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, why did I watch that movie? Like, it had a negative impact on me. And I'm like, I get that it's an important message. I get that what it did what it wanted to do. But for me, that wasn't a good experience. And it's not one that I want to go relive. So I'm just waiting. Like you said, I'm waiting on the right time. There may be a right time. But this is a wonderful thing you just said. Is we're friends. We have made friendship. Those of you in the chat, I appreciate it. We've been able to hang out. There have been some things that have happened in my personal life within the last couple of weeks. And my daughter's on her way home today. She'll be home. She's saying like as early as 11 p.m. tonight, but maybe 1 a.m. It will be good to see her. I'll just put it that way. And if you guys know what's going on, great. Otherwise, this is a great time of year that brings a lot of emotion for folks, a lot of joy and happiness for folks, but it's also a time that brings great deep sorrow and sadness for some folks as well. So what we try to do here is talk about the thing we love in a way that is hopefully
It's
encouraging,
escapism.
uplifting.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to be that. And Bestman, I sincerely appreciate what you've done for me today, coming on the show and talking to me for an hour and a half, almost going on 2 hours that we've been hanging out. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's a pleasure every time.
I've got 2 Mike Porter dad jokes
Nice.
because I forgot the one last week. And so this was the one from last week. It says, who is the best landscaper in the galaxy? That'd be Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Nice. Very good. Very good.
There's a name for a landscaping company right there.
I had the same thought. Yeah, somebody needs to do it.
Somebody needs to do it. And today's Mike Porter dad joke says, what do you call a whiny bounty hunter? And this is on the nose. This is on the nose. For it's got depth to it. He's Boba Fett.
Nice. Nice. Very good. Very good.
That was really well done, Mike Porter. That was on the nose for many reasons. It was great. Well, thank you again. And you guys, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bestman, is there anything else that you want to touch on before we call it?
We've mentioned that the Tiger movie is like probably many years away. One thing I've heard recently is that they like Sean Levy. They like him a lot. He's probably one to keep an eye on at the moment, more than even Mangold, maybe. I don't know. But like, they like him at Disney because he's delivered them Free Guy in the recent years and was a successor in like the time the box office was suffering with COVID. He's doing Deadpool 3 and there's been no hiccups. Like we talked about the Marvel situation, how strained it's been over there. But Deadpool 3 is causing no bumps. He's a very professional guy, and Lucasfilm like him, Disney like him. Yeah, I've heard that movie is, quote, a goer. So yeah. I'm not saying it's greenlit, but it's a go. So
yeah, very good. And Aria's been in the chat trying to goad you into one small hint on Tails. You could say no. I just say I've seen her post many times.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I'll give her one more shot to goad you into giving away something. But you can say no.
I can say no. I can say that you'll see it for Andor, maybe. I don't know if that's good enough.
There
for
you go.
You know?
I like that. I like that. There you go. There's your one small hint. You may see it before Andor. How about that? That's great. All right.
He wasn't happy. I try to be like so vague with it.
You did great. You did great. Perfect. All right, you guys. With that, we're going to call it. You have a wonderful weekend. I can't wait to talk to you guys next time. Until then, my friends, Merry Christmas, and may the Force be with you always. Bye-bye.